everybody. Welcome to the Lightning Talks. Our first speaker is going to be Mike Vince. So Mike, the mic is yours.
All right. Let's see. So I'm back. Decided to do a lightning talk the last minute, so forgive the low quality slides. All right. So I just wanted to go over some of those recent improvements that were made to Ecto that I mentioned earlier. There were 3 improvements: the Ecto parameterized type, Ecto enum, and redact true. First off, the Ecto parameterized type, which allows parameters for custom types to be included on a per field basis. Those parameters are specified in the schema field definition, and those parameters are then passed into the cast, load, and dump functions. As far as the type, this is the old or the original version of Ecto type. We can see we specify Ecto UUID, and the cast gets that data when that those values are when a field of that value is cast. But you can't specify anything on a per field basis. So to compare that to the parameterized type, here you can see there are 2 fields being specified. Both are parameterized types. So the parameterized type is only defined once. There's one module that exists, and on 2 different fields, you can have 2 different values or 2 different parameters, sets of parameters. And then you can see in the cast call that when you're writing your logic to cast, you can get that information. So if your options are different on different fields, you then don't have to create a new parameterized type for each one of your fields with those chain differences. The first parameterized type that went in with the same pull request was Ecto enum, which allows you to work with atoms and schemas. It stores those atoms as strings in the database, and then retrieves them out of the database and automatically converts them to atoms. So that's what you're working with right when you enter repo.all or repo.cat. It casts strings safely, so if someone tries to cast a string that isn't one of your specified values, it won't cause a atom overflow. So here is an example of that. If you want to use an enum field, you'd specify it this way, simply saying which values are legal for that field. And then, as you can see, here's some three cast calls. The first one, we're taking the atom foo and change is allowed. The second one, we're taking the atom the string foo as the value, and then that is converted to the atom foo. So if you're pulling in values from Phoenix and you want to take those string values and convert them to atoms, it works. But then it's also protected, because if someone sends a string that's not one of the allowed atoms, it'll reject it in the change set. And then the third thing was the redact field on Ecto, which is also added. You specify this redact value in the schema field. It redacts the values in 2 places. The first one is when you're inspecting the schema instance, and I'll show you that in a second. And the second one is that it redacts values in changes when you're inspecting a change set. And so this is, as you can see here, it's specified simply by saying redact true on the field. Here we have our password is redacted, our username is not. And so we'll take a look at a couple different ways of that this shows up. In the first one, we are casting that redacted schema module with username and password, and you can see that when the inspect, so when IEX inspects that, it goes through the changes and says, you told me to redact this password field, so I'm gonna redact it inside the changes so that it doesn't get exposed when that value is in a change step. And then the other one is simply, if you inspect the actual schema itself and it has a password in it, that password will not show up as one of the fields in the inspect, protecting that value. I go into this more on the Thinking Elixir podcast, episode 11, that came out this week. And if you have any more questions, my GitHub and Twitter is there, and I'd love to talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. I'm gonna clap for all the people that is watching you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's see who it's gonna be next. Next, we have Zach Daniel.
Hey, Zach. Welcome
Hey,
to the
Zach.
stream.
Oh,
Hello there.
all right. Am I up? Should I just get started?
You are up. Like millions of people is watching you right now.
All right, that's good to know. Well, I have something very informal prepared, so let me go ahead and share my screen.
Yep.
That's desktop one. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at today is something that I wasn't able to get to in my talk tomorrow for the Ash framework. Specifically, I'm going to be highlighting the DSL and the way that you can extend the DSL if you're using Ash in your own application. So what you can see here, this is an example of what a resource might look like. Let me go ahead and go to a simpler resource. Okay. So this resource has DSL sections, is what you'd call these. This JSON API section, a policies section, an action section. And then these sections can have two things. They can have options like this. This is an option. And they can also have entities. So this is an entity here. And the distinction doesn't matter too much for somebody using the DSL, but when you're trying to design something for the DSL, then you care. So what I'm going to show here is that the documentation for this stuff is all sort of up on HexDocs. So if you're interested in creating an extension to Ash, essentially adding extra configuration to a resource or building a custom extension because you're using it, this is the way that you would do that. So you would go to take a look at the Ash DSL entity and section documentation to see sort of like what kind of fields are available. So what I'm going to kind of breeze through quickly is how you might add a custom section. Maybe let's say you've got a data import that you do. It's just your own thing. Like there's, it doesn't have anything to do with like the basic stuff that Ash offers, but you want a place to sort of put the configuration for your custom import. So I'll show you what that might look like. And so the way we'll do this is we'll go ahead and we'll put this in extensions / maybe, let's not call it import, let's call it ETL. And then we'll say / extension.ex. All right, so I spelled that word wrong. Also, it thinks that that is a folder. So let's delete that. And let's create a file. So here we've got our helpdesk.extensions.etl.extension. This is probably a little bit much. We'll just call it ETL, actually. Cool. And so what we will do, and the general pattern for how you do this is you'd create a section, maybe we'll call it ETL, and this is an ash.entity.section. And this section, we can take a look at the docs here to see kind of what our options are. So first we're going to start off with just a name. And I think that's kind of, if I recall correctly, that's all we really need to get started. So we'll give it a name, call it ETL, and then we will use ash.dsl.extension. And we will pass in the sections option and we'll pass in the ETL section. That's right, this is ash.dsl.section. And then, So I think that this is actually all that we're going to need to see that sort of in action. We can say help desk extensions.etl. And then right here, we can say ETL do, and this isn't going to do anything on its own. It doesn't do anything. But if we were to go into help desk, you should be able to see when it compiles. So we can say example, or sorry, help desk. We called this is help desk. Yeah, so we'll call this. Oh yeah, so there is actually one other thing you need to do. Specifically, you need to define some way to actually get this configuration out. We need to add an option. So we'll say, let's say this. I'll add one option just to kind of show you what that might look like, or one entity. And we'll call it like a field that you're going to be importing. So we say ash.dsl.entity field. We have to give it a target. So we'll call this helpdesk.extensions.etl.field. And that's essentially just the struct that we're targeting. And we'll give it a schema. We'll give it, each field needs to have a name, type Atom. We can give it like a doc string here if we want, or we can give it, we can say it's required. We can also make it a argument, which will make sense here shortly. We'll say name. Okay, so this is our field argument to our ETL section. So we'll put it up here, and then we can say entities. Taking the field in right there. And then we will do we'll define a way to actually get the stuff out of it. So we'll take a resource, something like this. Right. So that has to be a list. So we can say extension or ash.dsl.extension, get field or get entities. And then we will pass it the resource. And then this is at ETL. I think this is actually all we need right here, ETL. Cool. So now we can go into our user section here, and we should be able to say field. Oh yeah, one last thing. We need to create the actual field entity. This target that we put in right here needs to be a struct. We'll give it a name field. Like we did over here, you can see it has a name. And now in our user, we can say field. Let's say user has like a read, or sorry, user has like a ID. So there's an ID field in our ETL system. It doesn't like that because undefined function field. Let's see, name field, entities field. Well, I may have done something wrong, but I think I'm probably pushing my 5 minutes. The idea here is that you're supposed to be able to, and I've done it like 1,000,001 times, but help us extension study. Yeah, I've done something wrong. But the main point is that you can use these extensions to add help us extension study. I think I typed something wrong here in the field. Let's see. Study extension study TL.field.
Typos, the everyday problems.
Yep. Well, I have a typo, but this would work. You should normally. Oh, wait, here we go. Nope, it's still broken.
All right,
well.
Zach. I think that we are running out of time.
We're running out of time, but this is how you would define a custom extension, and it normally goes better than this just went. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Zach. Okay, up next, we have Hal Fulton. Hal, are you there?
I'm here.
All right, so go ahead.
Okay, you don't get to see me because I haven't had a haircut in months. I look like Beethoven, but I'm going to share my screen. And I don't look like Beethoven in a good way. no composing skills. But, okay, I'm hoping you can see that.
Yes, we can.
Great. My name is Hal Fulton. I'm not well known in the Elixir community, but I'm still fairly well known in the Ruby community. And what I am talking about is the book that I started more than 4 years ago and I'm still working on. And if you don't know who I am, I wrote one of these books. It's widely rumored to be the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, but I assure you that is not true. So anyway, you might know this guy better than you know me, Johnny Wynn. He is very big in the Elixir community. And I had the idea of writing a book that would help Ruby programmers learn Elixir. And in the process of Googling, which I probably should have done sooner, I found that somebody else had had the idea at least 2 years earlier than I had, and it was Johnny. So he and I talked to each other and said, well, we should join forces. So we did that, and we started something, but it was going very slowly, very sluggishly, I should say. And Johnny dropped out of the project to deal with like family and life and all those other things. And since I don't have a family or a life, I was the perfect person to continue. No disrespect to Johnny, he's very knowledgeable. He's a real Elixir expert, a great guy. But he didn't have time to write a book. And so now this is all on me. However, in the last 4 years of my life, some things have been going on, and you may have heard the old saying, life is what happens while you make other plans. And I assure you that is very true, because very little of the things that happened in the last 4 years were planned, least of all COVID-19, which affects all of us. So I'm using these things as sort of excuse for why I'm still writing this thing. So I would say that I'm about 75% finished. That's, a real seat of the pants guess, because how do you measure something like that? You especially can't measure the length of a chapter you haven't written yet. And some of them are, not even begun, although maybe half of them are even finished, or either finished or begun. Anyway, if you are familiar at all with the Ruby way and my own writing style, you might find more of the same things that you're used to and have come to love or hate in my writing, such as gratuitous alignment of comments for no reason whatsoever. Maybe it will please the OCD in you or irritate the heck out of you if you don't have OCD. You'll also find some fairly cool drawings, like in this explanation of tail call recursion and tail call optimization. You'll find some Venn diagrams, which I have formed a habit of using lately, because more and more in our society, people just don't understand Venn diagrams and don't appreciate them. So you'll also find a fairly cool bot game that you can watch in real time, where bots are playing a sort of capture the flag game. If I can get all the bugs out of it and get it to work properly. You'll find numerous kinds of geeky Easter eggs, only about half of which I've named here, like Monty Python and Star Trek and Princess Bride and pop culture references and everything you could ever not want, including good puns and bad puns, good puns, I don't know, either kind, both kinds. Now here's the progress. I don't have the chapter numbers here, but they are in order here. And I start with 0, which is a really geeky computer science joke. And I titled the chapter 0, Read This First. No, really, because people, the closer to the front something is, the more people want to skip it. That's just sort of human nature. And I go through and cover all the things that I think are important or interesting about Elixir. And as you can see, some of the chapters are completely finished. There's like 9 of them that are completely finished, and 5 or 6 that are in progress, and then some that are barely started. But all this is just to say that you may have forgotten me, but I haven't forgotten you. This book is still being worked on, and it is still going to be a thing. And that is all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hal. Thank you so much. All right, so up next, we have Isaac.
Yes.
Yeah, so welcome to the Lightning Talks. I'm very curious about the most important Visual Studio Code snippet for Elixir. So please tell us.
Yes. So this is the most important VS Code snippet you could possibly use if you're an Elixir developer. So, and here's how, so you can find this at https slick.bit/bits.70. I wanted to help promote somebody in our Elixir community who spun up a website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this code. So let's just do this snippet.pipe. And it's just a silly little pipe that I wrote to make a point. And you look at that code, you kind of expect it to give 3. Uh-oh, it gave 5. What did I do wrong? How would you diagnose this? Well, this is what this VS Code snippet does. I'm going to do a multi-line highlight and type 3 characters, and boom, I've got IO and specs down the entire thing.
Isaac, I believe that you are not sharing the coding. You are just sharing sharing the Chrome. Yep.
Let me share the right thing.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's well, that's my bad. 1 second. I was so excited to go that I totally shared the wrong thing. Okay, there you go. So you should see the code.
Yeah.
So
yes.
so let's run this snippet.pipe foo. It's just a silly pipeline. I just wrote it to make a point. If I run this pipeline, you get something that you might not expect. So you might have to debug it, right? Oh, why is this 5? Okay, so now I'm going to do a multi-line highlight and type in 3 characters, and it has dropped io.inspects everywhere. And then if I recompile and then run it again, now I can see, you know how io.inspects work, and you can see exactly what the problem was. All right, and the great thing about this snippet is that the way that it crafts io.inspect, almost all the time they'll be the same length, so you can ninja it out like that, and it's gone. And that's all I have to say. Go check out SlickBit. It's a pretty cool. I'm not affiliated, but they're in the Elixir community, so help support them and have a good rest of the conference.
Thank you so much. That was really fast and useful.
Jorge, maybe you should turn down your camera and tell us what are you working on. Your own lightning talk. I think you're on mute, Jorge.
Sorry, Francia, you missed it. I already said it.
Oh no, I missed your lightning talk. That's a shame.
My 10-second lightning talk.
Okay, so I believe we have Brian Glusman in the room.
Hello.
Hey, Brian.
Let me share my screen. There's not any slides for this, and it's a very, very lightly structured talk, if structure is even the word. But I did some cool work over the last year, mostly in May, June, July, on a new feature for Live Dashboard, and then a new project based on that feature. I figured it was worth a lightning talk. So the project, for anyone who's interested, is called Live Dashboard History. And it's mostly based on work I did on a pull request into Phoenix Live Dashboard to get to add support so that when you open the metrics tabs in Live Dashboard. So most people by now probably hopefully have heard about Live Dashboard. It's really cool. It's been out it was announced sometime, I think in January or February. And when it came out, I thought it was really cool. But I thought one thing I was sort of disappointed by was the fact that you had to come to the metrics page and you had all these cool metrics there. But when you came there, they had no data. They would only show you the data that was already live. They came in while you were connected. And I thought, well, we have stateful processes in Elixir. We should be able to store a buffer of recent data to show people. We shouldn't, wait until they're there to have anything to show them. And there were some good reasons that Jose and Mike and everyone decided not to do this initially, because the statefulness of where to store this data was a big question. It could take up a lot of memory, but they were open to the idea of having a hook to allow you to bring your own storage mechanism for the data. So by default, in Live Dashboard, there's still no history, but there's a pull request that came in that mostly made really not a huge number of changes, but I had to work kind of hard with Jose and over a series of iterations to get something that they were happy with, to allow us to call out to an arbitrary process to get the data for a given graph. Most of those changes were made here in this file in Metrics Live. I can walk through the code a little bit and show you if people are curious, but the end result, there's in Phoenix Live Dashboard, there's a guide on using metrics history. It's part of the main library now. And there's also in the built-in dev environment for Live Dashboard, there's a sample implementation called Demo Web History. And this is a very, very simple gen server that can store the state of all of your metrics charts in memory, ephemerally, for up to some number of the history buffer size, whatever this number is. Right now it's storing 50 events per thing. You can just change that number and make it larger. My project is largely sort of a fork or an expansion of this thing I built to test Live Dashboard here and make it a little more general so that you can, without having to copy paste all that code, you can just do 2 pieces of config, modify your Live Dashboard here by adding metrics history, Live Dashboard history, metrics history, and the module for your router. And this is largely, the module is only there so that if you happen to have an umbrella app or an application with multiple routers in it, you can have a separate history configuration for each router. Since this lives in your router and this is where Live Dashboard config comes in, we wanted to leave this coming in the same way. And then you have to add to your Elixir app config, either if it's only one router, the router and the metrics module that you're using here. If you have multiple routers, you can pass in a list of maps. Each map can have router and metrics keys or these other keys. The upshot is when you have my extension running or some other, if you wanted to store your state in Redis, you could very easily fork or modify the same idea. What's happening here, build a little adapter either with my library or otherwise, and store your state, your history in Redis, and then serve it from Redis into Live Dashboard. The sample implementations that come with this are only there to store in the gen server and to store either a map or actually you could do ETS, I think, based on one of the dependencies is this cbuff, and cbuff has an ETS, a map, and a queue, I think, that it implements it, and that's a circular buffer. I also built a very small test suite for Live Dashboard history using Norm to do property testing, because it's not actually a great use case for property testing, but I was curious to have a good excuse to play with it. So basically I'm generating arbitrary telemetry events here. as a type of schema from norm. And then I do a check all to say, generate all kinds of different schemas and metric specs and all the different buffers we support from cbuff library. And just make sure that when you emit telemetry metrics with the telemetry events we've defined, when you define those metrics for those telemetry events and then execute them, that the live dashboard returns something that's not an empty list. So it's very agnostic of exactly what's coming back. It's not checking correctness because all it's doing is storing and forwarding the events, but it tests a number of different cases that we support here. And it's sort of a fun use of norm and property testing to test something very general. If anyone wants to play with this, I have a live dashboard demo project that is called Live Dashboard History Demo. It's linked, I think, on the Live Dashboard project here to make it easy to just play with it locally. Maybe I don't link to it here. I need to add a link into my README here. Literally just, sorry. It's literally just the same thing, underscore demo. And that's what I'm running here. You can see if I refresh the page here, it will eventually reload basically the same data you're seeing. You also can play with it. It takes a moment to load, but here, this is the data we change. It's not the exact same data because the browser will hold more data than the number of events we're buffering, but any new connections that come in will get the recently buffered history. Similarly, I also used shout out to Sean Doomspork. ElixirCompanies.com is an open source playground for the community to use, and their live dashboard is public for everyone to see. So I actually added live dashboard history there and sort of developed my fork against their thing to get it in production before the actual thing was merged in. So we could use my fork of live dashboard while it was in development, get real data on how much memory usage it was affecting. And as you can see, it's not particularly tough on memory, largely due to some suggestions from Jose to only store the processed events and not store the raw telemetry events. So it's pretty much just storing almost the exact raw data you'd see here for each chart.
Ryan?
Yeah, sorry, we out of time?
Yeah, we're out of time, but is there any link or something you want to share?
Yeah, sure. I can post a link to the project. Should I paste it into the chat? I'll stop sharing and paste it in here. I don't know. I guess people on the web can't see the Zoom chat, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think that they are not gonna be able to see the link. Well, but what's your Twitter? Twitter is a good.
My Twitter is B Glusman.
There you go.
At B Glusman.
Perfect.
And anyone with questions or suggestions, welcome. But otherwise, it should be hopefully pretty easy to use and hope it was interesting.
All right. Well, that was great. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thanks. Bye.
I think that's it, Francia.
I think we are done with the lightning talks. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Anything else, Jorge, that we are missing?
I don't know. Keep using Elixir.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.